Hello, 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 my beautiful pearls. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're having a great Thursday. I am personally excited for today's live. I'm having a great day. It's a little bit foggy or cloudy here in Dubai today, but that doesn't mean that this will stop us from being so excited and, so energetic as usual. Today I am very thrilled because I'm going to talk about a topic that to me sort of is a kind of summary of what I had in my life. And some stuff, I have to say, we keep on dealing with throughout our life. So as usual, today I'm going to be with you for between 45 minutes to 1 hour. And I want you to stick to the end because at the end I have a very nice invitation, special invitation for you. Our topic today, as you may have seen in the post, I'm going to be talking about the 3 main wounds that every single one of us has. Obviously, if you have your parents, which is the case, that means these wounds exist in you, whether you're a man or a woman. So I'm going to be talking about these 3 wounds. I'm going to be sharing with you how you can find out what the wounds are, that, like the wounds that you have, which one are they, if they're all there or you have one of them but not the other 2, or I truly believe we have all 3 of them, but then again, from my own experience, that's what I've noticed and that's what I've seen. So before I share with you all this information, I want to share with you how I figured it out, how I realized that, I have these wounds and what these wounds are. So I was born in a country that had a lot of issues, still having, unfortunately. I always mention that. And in my home country, the fact that there are so many social constraints and there are so many social inhibitions and there are so many expectations from everyone, life becomes a little bit tricky for almost every single person over there. So, and let alone when I was born, it was like in the 70s, and during that time there were so many differences between in my country, and I don't like to talk about this, but there are so many different social ranks. There are so many different social constraints, like I said, but there are so many different also religions. And in some parts of the world, that could mean nothing, But unfortunately, in my country, it meant so many things and still does. There are so many clashes that happen between people and among people because of that very specific reason. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because when my parents got married, they come from a completely 2 different sects. And the fact that they come from from 2 completely different sects, it made their partnership or their relationship a little bit more challenging than other relationships that would happen among 2 people who are from the same sect, or maybe even from the same village or from the same city, or someone who gets married to a lady who is chosen by his mom or his parents, and the same thing for the woman. When my parents got married, they kind of defied the whole process. They defied the whole system. They say they defied the whole world by being together and by you know, coming together from two different sects. And both of these sects, especially the sect of my dad, like the religious sect of my dad, is a very kind of closed up one. So for them, just doing that was kind of a triumph, but it also affected a lot of things in their lives moving forward. You know, when they were going through life, when they were going through everything that they went through, there were a lot of things that were sort of affected by this fact of who they are and who they were when they got married. So anyway, they got married, they went through a lot, and also there was the war, the very famous war. And I was born literally 1 month before, or not one, like 1 month after the first trigger that caused the war in Lebanon, which is my home country. So I was born in a time when there was a lot of unrest, there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of, you know, uncertainty. In addition to the fact that my parents were married from completely two different sects, and their families were kind of causing some issues between them. Now, that's how I remember it. Or, let me put it in a better way, that's how my mom used to tell me that this is how it happened. And the reason why I'm saying this is because those things that we hear when we are kids and the things that we see when we are kids, these are the matters, or these are the life happenings that when we are kids we absorb, and they live with us through our lives. And if nobody comes and tells us, no, that's not the way it is, this is the way it is, we won't be able to figure it out until maybe later in our life, when we become very conscious, when we become very aware, and when we are in a place in our life or in a situation in our life where we want to know why we do things the way we do them, or why things happen to us. And I truly believe nothing happens to us, but you know, a lot of people think that things happen to them, and why is this happening to me? I used to think that way, don't get me wrong. Now I don't think that way anymore, because now I know. But before, I used to always think, why is this happening to me, and why is that happening to me, and why is my life, you know, always going down the drain, and why things keep on repeating themselves, you know, until I realized so many things related to my childhood, and mainly my childhood. And this is mainly where these three wounds that I'm going to be talking about today, this is where mainly they start, this is where they develop. But let me tell you how I figured it out, or what happened, so that I had this, you know, aha moment that I want to understand where I am in my life, and why do I have all these kind of issues that I really wanted to work on, and I did work on. And like I said, there are so many things that will always pop in our life, and they will always come back over and over again to remind us of, you know, how much we've evolved from where we are maybe now here, and tomorrow we're going to be here. But so that we don't get too much in our own brain, sometimes it helps, you know, that we bring those situations back to our life, just to remind us of where we were and where we are now, and how much we have been through, and how, you know, how good that journey was and how beneficial it was for us. Because I truly believe when we start doing this and when we start figuring things out for us and understanding where we are and what are the limitations that we have and where our potential is, I'm pretty much certain we would all want to go in that direction. Like, nobody wants to go down, right? I mean, it makes zero sense, right? If you are just sensible enough, you would want to be that person who grows, that person who becomes way much better. So, having said that, back in, I think it was 2010, and just like I mentioned, now coming from that household where, and just to give you a hint, that household was always on fire. And when I say on fire, I don't literally mean on fire. I mean, there was always an issue. There was always a problem. There was always fighting. There was always, shouting. There was always unrest. Like I say, it's kind of a consistent war. I mean, I'm laughing now, but believe me, when I was a kid, I wasn't laughing at all. At all. If I remember properly, I used to cry my eyes out all the time. And when I'm going to tell you about those very specific wounds, you will see how much that affected my life later on in the future when I was like going through my life. So back to my story, in 2010, my brother comes to me and we live in the same household. So I would assume we have the same issues. And that's pretty much true. Even if he is a guy and I am a girl, right? That doesn't matter. The gender of a person does not really make a difference when we're talking about your inner wounds. And these wounds are carried with us all. Whether we're men or women, we all have them. Now they differ from one person to another. The intensity is different here, or sometimes the mother, like the wounds that we have from the mother, which are called the mother wound, sometimes they are more apparent in women. But trust me, if men have mother wounds, like, you don't want to be in that place, I promise you. And the same applies to women when they have the father wound. I know I had both. And I know I am still working through some of the wounds from both. Okay? And obviously there's the child in us. And that child who has been through a lot and has been hurting for so long also. Those are the inner child wounds, because we all have that inner child in us. So once we are working on those wounds, and I'll get to that later on, I will explain to you how you will see, like, because there are things that you can see in people's daily actions, how they live their life, their emotions, their status all the time, that will give you an indication of where they are when it comes to these wounds. So, because my brother is my brother and we lived in the same household, so we have pretty much the same wounds, except maybe in his case, because he identifies more with my dad, his wounds were more related to my mom and how she was treating us when we were kids. I have both, kind of equally, and I only realized that not too long ago, that I have like an equal level, if you want, or intensity for both wounds. Maybe that's the word. So my brother comes and he says, look, I've been doing a lot of meditation and oh my God, it helped me so much. I totally can understand and I'm kind of indifferent to how, we were treated as kids, especially by my mom, who was kind of abusive all the time. And I think you should do this. Now, if anyone knows me, I'm not someone you come and say, you should do this. right? I'm a person who I have like my own way of thinking, and I want to be really comfortable with what I'm doing, and I want to feel that it works for me. So I usually don't just go, like if you come and tell me, you gotta try this, maybe, but maybe not. I prefer to have things come out of my own will, not being imposed. And my brother, God bless him, I miss him. he's, he's very far away. So he always has this like, you gotta do this, come on, go for it, which is very nice, to be quite honest. Just doesn't work with me. So he said, you have to try it, it's amazing, and it put me in a different place, and look at me, I don't care, I'm not affected by that anymore. So I thought, you know what, why not, let me give it a try. And I did. I tried at that time. Now, don't get me wrong, meditation is a very important tool, especially in what I do, in what everyone does. I think when you sit and you meditate, and meditation doesn't really have to be this, it's not like that all the time. You can just sit and meditate without doing anything, just closing your eyes, breathing in, and just letting go, and you would be meditating. It doesn't have to be that kind of like understanding that we have for meditation. And meditation is very important. But at that time, I didn't know. I had no idea. I had never meditated before. And so I asked him to send me some stuff, and he did. So when he sent me that stuff, I kind of tried, all right. And I think at that time, because I really had like zero clue, and I also didn't know anything about meditation. I didn't know anything about what I was going through, because in my mind, I remember very well, I remember telling him, hey, I'm over it. I really never think about how we were treated as kids or what was happening to us as kids. And I wasn't lying, by the way. It was so true. The only problem that I didn't realize then was that it's true. I kind of got over it and I don't think about it anymore. But every single thing in my life, my whole life, was based literally on these wounds. So I was living my life having the worst relationships ever. And this is one of the, for example, the symptoms of having a father wound, is to always look for that person who's going to make us miserable. And that's what I was doing. That's just an example. I used to sabotage myself all the time. And that's also another symptom, for example, from having a father wound. I used to play the victim role. I used to be oversensitive, and I'm like, why is the world treating me like... And this is one of the symptoms of having a mother wound. But at that time, I had zero clue. I literally knew nothing. But in my mind, just the fact that I was not remembering my childhood, or I was not living my childhood again in my old age, or, well, not old age, in my maturity, I was fine, and I thought I was fine, up until I remembered, or I lived through a lot of issues with myself, with my friends, with my family, with everything that was happening in my life. And I realized, like, okay, there's something wrong here, and there's something fishy, and I'm going to figure it out. I want to understand what that is, And I really thought I had gone over everything, and I had, nothing. I love this. And I had kind of nothinged my whole childhood. Like it meant zero, it had zero effect on me. This is how my brain saw it for some time. Until, you know, I think we all reach a certain point in our life when we start wondering. We, like me, having so many ups and downs and so many things not going my way, and especially my procrastination part, like the way I used to procrastinate all the time, those were alarming things that were happening in my life that made me open my eyes, that made me think there's more to it than me just being me. You know, there is more to it than me going with the flow of life. There has got to be something else. There has got to be a different perspective to things. There's got to be something that I am not seeing. I am sure it's there, and I just was completely determined to figure it out. And I was completely focused that this is what I'm going to do. This is what I owe it to myself to understand me. I owe it to myself to know me, to figure me out before figuring anything else out. And so for me to be able to do that, I went through that. It was like kind of a quest, and it still is, and I'm still doing it all the time. And I truly believe that we don't stop. Like once we start, it's like the Pringles ad, when you pop, you don't stop, literally. When we start working and figuring out everything about who we are and our potential, and you know, the hidden gems that we have, we just want to make sure that we find everything, and that everything is there to help us work, like to help us go through our life, because nothing is there for no reason. Everything we have is there for a reason. And we all go through a very specific process in our life. We all have it. It just happens differently with different people. And sometimes people figure things out like earlier than others. Like my brother, he figured his stuff out earlier than I have. But I have as well. So it's kind of like everything happens in the right time, when it's meant to happen, in its divine timing. And when it starts happening, this is when we want to be always, like we prefer to be always open-minded and ready to figure things out. Because when I was in that place, and when I decided that, okay, now I'm ready to understand, it wasn't easy. I tell you, the things that I went through, the dilemmas that I had, the inner discussions in my brain, like, this is right, no, this is not right, this is good, this is not good, and figuring things out, for me, it was a bumpy ride. It wasn't a smooth sail, to say the least. It certainly was not a smooth sail. And when I started digging, and I started, and I tell you, I like to use the word digging, because that's exactly what we do when we start working on figuring ourselves out. And when we start, you know, wanting to understand everything about us, so that we can understand everything about life. Because, you know, life doesn't happen on the side, you know? It happens with us, and it happens for us. And if we don't know us, we won't be able to figure anything out about life, our life. And the reason why I'm talking about all of this is because figuring yourself out starts with understanding what are those wounds that you have. And like I said, those wounds are mainly, there are so many, by the way, they're not the only 3 wounds, but these are like the main 3 wounds that literally shape not your life, they shape your persona, they shape your personality, they shape who you are. Not just the life that you live, but literally who you are. Because when we develop those wounds, and we all do, like I said, in different intensities, those wounds that are being developed from when we were kids, the fact that they're living with us through our life, they're going to be shaping a lot of who we are. They will shape a lot of our emotions. They will shape a lot of reactions of how we react to things, or how we see things, or how we look at things. And because of that, we want to understand those wounds. And when we do, and when we heal those wounds, and it's an ongoing process, like I said, it's because sometimes things pop out of nowhere, things that we miss. But when we do, this is when, first of all, we feel more peaceful, because there's no, like, there's this self-talk that we do all the time. The more we understand who we are, the more we understand what our wounds are, and start working on them, that self-talk becomes very minimal, and the more we do it, and the clearer things become, like that volume becomes so low, sometimes it's hardly a whisper, So my daughter's gonna give me a heart attack one day. I hope I just don't do it live. Lucky. See, this is the beauty of having to do a live from home. Maybe I should find her another place when I do the lives. Anyway, Lucky, come here. Come, boo boo. All right. Well, I survived the war. I survived so many things. I just hope I can survive my dog barking out of nowhere. So going back to those wounds, and how we find them out, and why they happen. I'm going to talk first about the mother wound, because mother wounds are very common with women, especially in a society that's so so demanding from women. Maybe not anymore, but when I was born, when my mom was born, during that time, and still is in one way or another, it's very demanding from women. And the fact that this was happening, for example, in my household, with my parents, my mom was very focused on making sure that she succeeds in whatever she was doing, especially with the fact that they got married from completely two different sects, and they were both working, both of them had a lot of social interests. They wanted things to become better for everybody in my home country. So they were always, fighting for the good, if I can say. So her focus was always on those things. Her focus was always outside of the house. She was always wanting to be that best teacher she could be, the best role model she could be, only not to her children. Her focus was outside. She was there. She was always there. Don't get me wrong, but not with her heart, not with her emotions. And the same applies to my dad. My dad was always there, physically. Never, like, I can hardly remember the times when my dad would, for example, pick me up and hug me and tell me he loves me. Although I know that he does, right? But that show of emotion, that being that parent who is willing to show you how much you mean to them, he didn't have that. So that's one side of it. And my mom, the fact that also she was never there, and when she was there, now that's the tricky part, she was there in a bad way. Like, she would be, always shouting, always making us feel like we're not good enough, always telling us things like, you're a failure, or I never wanted you to be born, or you're like the biggest mistake of my life. Things that we say to our children. That, and what I love about these days, I love how conscious parents are these days. And it's amazing when I look at my friends who have kids. I love how they deal with their kids. It's like they do it subconsciously. They some of them don't even know that they might have the father wound or the mother wound, but because they didn't have what they are giving to their children today, that's why they are given. And I always said, if I ever have a child, I'm gonna treat that child the best way ever, because I was not treated well. And the fact of thinking that way and having those thoughts means that I actually do have those wounds that I'm talking about. The fact that I know, for example, that I'm someone who always, again, not anymore because I've been working on myself. I've worked really hard. Well, I've worked hard, and I'm still. But I used to be that person who was always ready to just cross the whole oceans and be there for you, to make sure that you are happy, to make sure that everyone around me is happy. I used to be that person, the people pleaser person. And being that person is like, this is one of the symptoms of having the mother wound, because I did not have that love, or I did not have that attention from my mom. So I wanted to give it to everyone. And it's also very close to not having an attention from my dad. So it was a combination of both, like a mother wound and a father wound combined in that person who is, going through figuring things out, but also going through those wounds and experiencing those wounds. So that's one of the things, that I used to please people all the time. I used to be very competitive. Like, I want to make sure that I win. I want to make sure that, I'm better than everyone else, especially when it comes to women. Like, women competing with women. This is another symptom of having a mother wound. And then always feeling like you must remain, like you should be that good girl. You should always be that good girl. Also, that is another symptom of having a mother wound. Because of the expectations of society where we live, and those unfortunate but true calibers that society imposes on us. I don't know, calibers maybe is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. So wanting to always making sure that I'm the good girl, and I will always be obedient and I will always do the right thing. That's also being in a mother wound. And sometimes having a mother wound also means that, I want to defy the whole world. I'm just going to say no to everything. Or I'm going to be like this rebellious person. And I used to have that as well. Because I wasn't happy with everything that I've been through in my childhood. And I wanted to, this was my my revolution, against everything that had happened to me as a child. And when I talk about this, I know that there are so many people out there who resonate, so many people out there who feel like, I'm not talking to them, but I'm talking about them. Like I said, these wounds, we all have them, all of us. And for example, in my case, I was always wanting to make sure that what I do is either rebellious, like I had the extremes. It's either rebellious or I wanted to be approved. I needed an approval somewhere, somehow, from that person who actually wounded me as I was a kid. Yeah, So these are some of the symptoms that you will want to look for to understand if you have the mother wound. And the symptoms that you want to look for to understand if you have the father wound is if you have just a little bit, not a little bit, maybe a lot of low self-esteem. It's because, the father, especially for men, right? The father is that role model, that person that they want to be like. They want to imitate. They want to grow up to be that person. And if that person is never there emotionally, that connection is so distorted. It's there, but it's so distorted. And this is why growing up, that low self-esteem develops, because, okay, we have this father figure, but it's just a figure. There's no emotion, there's no real connection there. And that causes a lot of people to develop low self-esteem. And this is one of the symptoms of having a father wound. Another very major symptom of having a father wound, and I used to have it a lot, which is that person who's always looking for love. Like, I used to always be searching for love, and like, for me, it was such an important thing to do, and it's such an important task that I needed to complete in my life, and that's the quest for love. Until I realized, and that's how I think I healed that part of my father wound, I realized that love is not out there, Love is just, and I spoke about this in one of my other trainings, love is not out there, love is within. When I figured that out, and I think this is how I kind of like, okay, no more looking for the endless, no more endless looking or endless quest for love, because I have all the love that I need. I have all the love that will make me thrive in my life, that will make me survive, that will make me become an even like the bestest version of me. I have it. It's within me. And that part, I'm just giving you a hint on how, for example, you can just at least that like symptom of the father wound, if you have it, start by loving you. Because the minute you love you, you will stop wanting to be loved. And then love will just crawl to you. You become magnetic to love. And when I talk about love, again, I'm not talking about the romantic love. I'm talking about the love that the affectionate love, the appreciation love, the love that we have for ourselves to start with. And it's kind of the unconditional love that a mother should have for her kids. That's the love I'm talking about. When you have a father wound, many times, especially with men, they become loners and they become like introverts, and they have like very poor social skills, maybe not even any social skills, or not even any social life. Like they kind of stay with themselves and they just are not out there. This is one of the symptoms also of having a father wound. Another one would be when they're over emotional, or over, like, their emotions are not stable, or not stable. I don't want to say stable. Their emotions are not balanced. That's the word. It's either like there are always these extremes. It's either like a very, for example, very, very angry, or completely depressed. There's no in between. There's no balance. There's no normal emotional life or emotional experiences when we have a father wound. And having a father wound, which is what I used to do as well, I used to look for the worst man out there and bring him into my life. Like, for me, it's kind of like was a triumph. Like, hey, yay, I got the worst man, It's always kind of like trying to find that father, but that father, like, because the father is not there. So one of the symptoms is, I'm just going to take whatever comes my way. And that is like, especially with women who are, interested in men, they would always want to go and look for that bad father, because that's what they know. They don't know anything else. They know a detached person. They know someone who's never there emotionally. So, like, I was always looking for that man. Subconsciously, by the way. I wasn't like doing it like, yay, let's do this, And when I figured it out, I stopped it, because of course that's not what I want. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be willingly, with a person who's going to make them miserable. Like, when we were with our parents, it's not something that, well, there's a big, it's argumentative, but still, it's not something that we chose as kids. Like, these are our parents, and because we're kids, because we still don't know, because we still don't have the means, we kind of have to live with them. We kind of have to struggle, to go through that struggle. So at that time, even if we had the choice on a soul level, because we do always have a choice, but physically and, socially, it's impossible for us as kids to just leave our parents just because we're going through stuff with them. And even when we are kids, most of the time we don't know that we're going through stuff with our parents. It's not like, oh, I know what's happening here. No, most of the time we don't, and we realize it when we are older. We start understanding that, okay, oh, this is what's happening. Now I get it, And before that, we just don't know. We don't know what's happening. We don't know who is leading what, or can we just get out of there, because it's impossible. But when we figure it out, we stop it, like what I did. And I'm sure everyone out there who's watching this and who's resonating with this and who's, going through their life, because this is what happened with me. When I see people talking about this, I start thinking, and I start, making that equation work, or how does it apply to me? How does this apply to me? Where am I from all of this? And I'm pretty much sure everyone who's going to be watching this, they're going to be thinking that way. Like, okay, Maysoon said she used to bring all those bad men into relationships, and she used to have struggle with relationships. And if you're someone who always struggles with relationships, this should be like a kind of a light bulb to you. Like, oh, is this what I'm doing? And why am I doing it? And then you start going through that process, and you start, if you are someone who is very, you're very accomplished, and you know your stuff, and you're amazing at what you do, and yet you don't believe it yourself, that low self-esteem could be related to maybe having a father wound. So maybe you'd want to look into that and see where that is happening. Now, this is when you want to find out if you have a mother wound or a father wound. What about that inner child? The inner child is a combination of all of this. The inner child is that person who actually went through all of these to develop the mother wound and the father wound, and and I truly feel like the inner child wound is, because it's a combination of both, and it's also very, I feel like I want to give the inner child, not just wound, the whole inner child concept, a training of its own, to be how do you say it, to be fair to the inner child within me, within anyone, quite honestly. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the symptoms that the inner child develops, but I think this is what I'm going to do, is a special training just about the inner child. I like that. How do you like that? The inner child in us is always there. When we go through a lot of things that we go through in our lives, when we go through them, and we have certain emotions that come to us, and we don't understand those emotions, these emotions are mainly coming from that inner child within us, because that inner child is having their moment, they're having their feelings, they're having their what's going on, so that's when we start having so many feelings. If we, I'll give you an example. One day I was having a kind of a very a chilled topic and a chilled discussion with a friend of mine, and I don't really remember what he said, but it was a very simple word. My reaction and the feelings of overwhelm, and I was really so unhappy, and I had this outrage burst for something that is very small. This is a symptom of me having a wounded inner child. So that's one of the symptoms. The self-sabotage that we do, that procrastination that we do, that we kind of decide that we come up with those plans and we ruin them. This is another symptom of having an inner child. I used to do this all the time, and that was one of the main reasons why I procrastinated so long. I was procrastinating because I was stuck in my wounded inner child. And the beauty of knowing things about your inner child is that you can actually always talk to your inner child. You can always have this kind of like dance and discussion between you and your inner child, and trying to understand them and figure out why they're doing the things that they're doing. But from my own experience, I truly believe that the inner child wounds develop because of having that distant father who is physically there but never there, emotionally. So whatever is creating the father wound is definitely also creating the inner child wound, because this is when it's all developing, when we are children, when we are being taken care of by those figures in our lives who are supposed to be the people who will give us unconditional love. So when they're giving us anything else, it just doesn't make sense. Because as kids, I think every kid knows that they're supposed to be loved unconditionally, when they come, because they're normally, they're innocent. They have zero clue. Why wouldn't we love them unconditionally? For me, even if they're not my own child, I would feel like I want to unconditionally love a baby or love a kid, So, and what happens also with people when they are having an inner child problem. Where is my Facebook? Okay. What happens is they develop very toxic coping mechanisms most of the time. Sometimes they're not toxic, but they're just not healthy. They're just, mechanisms that are not supportive, to say the least. They go through addictions, and addictions, they don't have to be like toxic addictions only, just any kind of addiction. Like I used to be a chain smoker, and I hated smoking when I was a kid. Like I remember always telling my dad, please stop smoking. And then I became my dad. I became my dad since like the age of 18. I became that person that's like, who's always having that cigarette in her hand. Until I realized, oh my God, this is why I'm doing this. And even when I quit, I have to tell you, I didn't do it consciously. Later on, when I figured it out, I was like, now I understand why this time I quit smoking. It's because I really didn't want to be that person. Because I don't relate to that person. I don't want to be that person because of having that father wound, and remembering that. That's the one thing that I really hated about him all the time, having like even the smell of it. Now when I talk about it, I remember the smell part. I didn't even remember it before. So that's another thing that happens when we have the child wound, the inner child wound, that developing those coping mechanisms that are really not good for us, that are toxic for us. And then, and this is a very big one, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to resonate with this one. When we have an inner child wound, one of the syndromes is that we have a very, very detached relationship with our family, especially the reason why we have that inner child wound, meaning the father and the mother, if they are existing still, even if they're not, there's this detachment, like family connection. That connection is not there when you have the inner child wound. And the inner child wound actually is the one that has so many things, because like I said, it's a combination of both. So a lot of people with inner like, even if they are, let's say, unhealed inner child wounds, they can reach to places where they have mental illnesses, where they have depressions, where they have diseases, even like physical, all sorts of issues, emotional, physical, mental, anything you can think of. If that, inner child wound is always there and it's never healed, it could become that. And then anxiety is one of the things that also can be developed. Low self-esteem that we spoke about already, because it's coming also from the father. And like I said, becoming like that person who's always thinks that they don't belong, that's also an inner child wound. And inner child wounds, I'm definitely going to do a special training about that, because there's a lot to talk about there. Now, the beauty of all of this, and the reason why I'm sharing all of this with you, is that it's true. We all have those wounds. All of us. No exceptions. And if we don't have all three of them, we definitely have at least one of them. Minimum. I'm pretty sure we all have all three of them. The beauty of it is that we can get out of it. Those wounds can be healed. And normally wounds are healable. And specifically these three wounds can be healed. And to heal them, we're gonna be in a position to have this as a preference for us in our life. Is this what I prefer for myself in my life? To be that person who is not wounded, who is thriving, who is succeeding, who is being that best version that they can be of who they are? Is this like where you would prefer to be, or you would prefer to stay stuck where you are now if you are in that place? Because what I've noticed actually is that so many people out there are already in a place where they are moving and working on themselves, and that makes me so happy, because seeing that people understand that they have options, and that people understand that they don't have to be stuck, and they can do something amazing with their lives. I love when I see this. And a lot of people are already doing this. Some people are still here, and I bet my life on it that they want to be here. They don't want to stay here. Nobody wants to stay down. And if someone is here, they want to go even higher. They don't want to go back down. Nobody wants to go backwards. Everybody wants to thrive. Everybody wants to become the best version they can be of who they are. And if that's you, and I'm sure it is, and you think that all of this resonated with you, and you felt like, you're talking my language, Maysoon, I get it. I know what you mean, and I know what you're talking about, and I really want to do something about it. And I want someone who has been there, done that, to guide me. So if this is where you are, and if this is what you're feeling right now, I want you to tell me. I want you to type down in the comments below, say I'm ready. Say I'm ready in capital. And I will know that you are in that place where you kind of resonated with everything that I talked about today, and you understand that yes, I do have these, and I really want to work on them, and I really want to change, because this is where I prefer to be. I prefer to be here. I don't want to be stuck here. I prefer to be here, and I prefer to even go higher. So if that's you, and you think for a second that I'm that person who can just hold your hand through the process, just let me know in the comments below. Say I'm ready, and I'll make sure I'll reach out to you. I'll talk to you on Messenger, I'll email you, we'll figure it out, we'll get on a call, we'll find out where you're at, where I can be of added value to you, and we'll take it from there. So remember, if you're that person and you are ready to cross that threshold and, give yourself that chance to be there for you, I am ready in the comments below. And I will be ready as well to reach out to you and see how I can help. And with that, I promise you, I'm going to be doing a separate training about the inner child, because I truly believe that that part is very juicy. And we'll probably do that maybe not next week, but in a couple of weeks' time. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, I wish you a great end of your day, wherever you are in the world, and have a great weekend. And I'll see you again next week. Ciao, ciao.